Hey everyone, welcome to Rev Trev NFL. My name is Rev Trev, and this is the post-game show. I want to talk about the game, but I want to introduce you to a friend of mine that you guys, if you've been watching the channel, are no stranger to seeing. By the way, the light in this room is amazing. So look at this thing. Anyways, here's my friend Peter. Welcome, Peter, to the channel, to the post-game show. Another incredible night in the NFL. Two amazing games. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. So far, so good. I don't think it was quite as good as this Kansas City-Baltimore game, but it was an entertaining game for sure. Sao Paulo, Brazil got their money's worth tonight.
Yeah, and like just diving into this game, there's so many storylines, so many things that we can talk about tonight. I'm really excited to have you on to talk about these things. And I just want to clarify with people who are watching, you're going to get the Packer takes tonight. Like you're going to get the Packer takes. You're going to get some Eagle takes. You're going to get fantasy football content as well, because we believe that people who watch football, almost about 80% of people who watch football also have a fantasy football team. So we're going to do both. And that's why we're here. And we could just talk. I could just go into depression, how we lost and how Jordan Love's hurt and all that kind of stuff. But we might as well stay positive tonight. And
it's week one, bro. It's week one. We got this.
So let's bring up what you thought. We made history. We went to Brazil, right? It sounds great. Sounds amazing. Oh, wow. The crowd and who's going to have more fans. And what it came down to, and this is what drives me nuts about these stupid international games, is the fields are garbage. And they're like slipping all over the field. And I'm like, why did I start anyone tonight? Because I know in Germany it's garbage. And England is garbage. So let's go to Brazil because it's going to be way better. No, everyone's slipping. So that to me was extremely frustrating. It just as a fan of the game, it was for both sides of teams, right? So technically there's no advantage, right? But come on, how can we not get this? I mean, it's a big deal.
I think it is a big deal. I think that something that you have to understand, especially as a Packer fan at this point, is they were saying that it actually mimicked quite closely the summertime field at Lambeau. So the Packers actually, they felt they should have had the advantage slightly because the field felt a lot like Lambeau Field. So
yeah, I heard that bull crap too, Peter. I do not believe that. It's just so that they talk about it. In all honesty, like you see them literally slipping, right? So like they're trying to save face. And I know that I'm ticked off because we lost, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, that's just disappointing. And I would have loved it to have been in Philadelphia instead, even though that would have been difficult. That would have been difficult, still a difficult environment. But that was frustrating. What wasn't frustrating though was the amount of points these, like, apparently we don't have defenses on either side of the ball. No. And then all of a sudden the defenses come to play at the end, and it's like, okay, so we have a defense for a quarter. They have a defense for a quarter.
It was definitely the tale of two halves. The two halves looked entirely different for sure. So,
yeah,
but it was entertaining. It was entertaining.
Totally.
And as a football fan watching a game, those are two good teams. In the end, it doesn't really matter who won or lost tonight, in the sense that that's probably two of the top 5 teams in the NFC that played the same way that last night 2 of the top 5 teams in the AFC played, and we got a good show out of those guys too.
Yeah. So, okay. So tonight, some of the questions we had for the Green Bay Packers was, how's the defense going to be? Can we stop the run? We haven't been able to stop the run for 2 decades. And it's like, well, you're playing Barkley. And then in the schedule, like if you look at their schedule to start, it's insane how many people have good running backs coming in to play against us. So it's like, all right, well, maybe we can slow him down.
Yes, and you probably did slow him down if he was going to run for 150.
Right?
Yeah. So Saquon Barkley tonight in your run game, 24 rushes, 109, and 2 scores.
Barkley had two rushing touchdowns. He had a catching one, right, too? So
and he almost scored at the end of the game. They stopped him on just inside the 1, so he would have had 3.
Hey, just a heads up, while we were talking, our friend Sean, our mutual friend Sean, just texted me, speculation on Love's injury. I'm not a doctor.
Hey.
Like, what do I know?
Tune into the podcast.
You're trying to get. Why don't you text me for the inside information?
Hey,
I'm not in Brazil.
I'm thinking that you have certain green blood as well, my friend. So there is a little Spock to you.
He just said, I said speculate. No. He's like, not professional. I'm like, I'm not in Brazil, so forget it, Sean. And then he says that I suck. Stop being a moron, Sean.
And I'm grumpy.
Anyways, I just want to like honestly, if your friend texts you that right after your team loses, like, what do you like? Your franchise quarterback goes down. What would you want me to answer? It looks bad. Looks like he tweaked something.
Hey, Jordan Love and Demko, you're in a good spot, buddy. It's a good season for Rev Trev.
Yeah. So anyways, the run game is very concerning to me, but what was encouraging was 2 picks on Jalen Hurts by the Green Bay Packers. The one with McKinney paid him huge dollars, and then Jair gets that pick, which was unreal as well. So it's Jaden going across. He had AJ Brown wide open. It's hard to make that throw. We all know that it takes talent. Not that Jalen Hurts is not talented, but it was encouraging to see, like, that was the nail in the coffin. If they would have scored that touchdown, gave us life, and I was encouraged by that. But I just didn't feel like we got enough pressure. We couldn't stop the run, but the secondary was trying to hold up, and that was crazy. That was crazy. So
yeah, I can't tell tonight. Whether Jalen Hurts actually looked like Jalen Hurts or whether Green Bay pressured so much that they made him look bad. But Jalen Hurts tonight, either way, I think you might be a little bit too hard on your defense in that sense, although the points didn't really show that much. But I thought that the pressure, because Jalen Hurts did look out of sync tonight. There was only like spurts in the game where I thought that there was good play from him. But as a whole, he did not look comfortable. He couldn't get out of the pocket. They actually contained him really well. So they were trying to contain the outsides were sealing those outsides. And only really late in the 3rd and 4th quarter did he start going up into the B gap and kind of going inside a little bit. So I thought that they did actually a really good job of containing him.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is
it's a good team, Philly, though, right? Come on now.
Very, very good team. And the addition of Barkley really helps.
Yeah.
Someone who I really enjoyed watching on the other side of the ball was Devontae Smith. Was really great. Really sneaky. I don't think he scored. I don't think he scored a touchdown. But
he didn't score, no.
But AJ Brown got the big one. It was like AJ Brown didn't really play a great game. Then all of a sudden, you look at his numbers, you're like, wow, he was the most dominant player. It's like, no, he wasn't. Their best wide receiver was Smith, but the touchdowns rain and AJ Brown's ended with a great game. So
yeah, I think his touchdown was either 76 or 77 yards. So that automatically puts you real close to 100 yards for a receiver for a game and a touchdown. So it looks a lot more dominant than it actually was. I think that sorry, the other receiver that you were just talking about,
AJ Brown.
Devontae was. I think that Devontae had 6 or 7 catches tonight. I didn't check that stat, but I believe he had 6 catches on 7 targets. But I'll have to check that.
Yeah, I don't know the targets. I don't have the targets here, but he had 7 receptions for 84 yards, and then AJ Brown had 5 receptions, 119. So.
Well, 5 receptions. So, but AJ Brown was the slightly dominant receiver. So on 10 targets, 5 catches. Devontae had 7 catches on 8 targets. So it was like 55-45 target share for the two of them. So pretty evenly matched. It just that Devontae looked like he got the ball in more sort of third down situations, and he got more first downs, and he sort of kept the ball rolling and all that sort of thing. So he was more involved in the game that way for sure. 5 receptions for AJ, 7 receptions for Devontae Smith tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Jaden Reed later, but man, he was dynamic tonight. He actually had 3 receiving touchdowns, but 1 got called back to a penalty. By the way, side note, and this is both sides of the ball again, the refs were awful tonight. There was quite like calls, and even the commentators are like, I'm not really sure that's what the rule book says. And it's like so weird. It really did impact the game. The good news is it did happen on both sides of the ball. So I was encouraged by, encouraged by that. But I was like, man, I was wishing that it wasn't. I mean, the amount of penalties was insane. So maybe they just both weren't very disciplined teams. Yeah. But man, I mean, that those calls were like, some of those I'm just like, what is going on? And that one on Jair Alexander at the end, that was really significant. It's like that's not holding,
right?
But we got away with stuff too. So it was frustrating watching. I guess that's put a little sour taste in the mouth because everything's kind of happening. It's like, wow, like come on, guys, like let's do it now. I get that they're going game speed. It's difficult.
Yeah. And there's some rule changes as well that they're trying to get right as well. But I mean, officiating is always officiating. I felt regardless of the calls, I felt it was very even on both sides. I don't think that anybody got an advantage. There was a couple of illegal shifts called on Philadelphia that Baltimore was getting called on the first night.
Yeah.
And it's a new rule where the guards and the tackles have to be in line. They have to be a helmet belt line to the center. And that gives it much more of a straight look rather than that sort of that arrow shape kind of feel to it. And so that's being called, and it's very technical. Like, you're looking at it and they're like, you're looking down the line. And they're like, wow, that dude's helmet is like millimeters, if anything, from the guy's belt line. And you're calling that a foul sort of thing. So, a penalty like that, I think that Philly got put back a couple times on those 2 calls. And that's unfortunate because they practice and practice and practice, and they do training camp, rep after rep, and that call is being made. So I think it did even itself out a little bit.
You know what also evened itself out was some of the bad throws by both quarterbacks that should have been pick sixes.
Yeah.
And then got dropped, and I was like, wow. Like,
yeah. I mean,
the defenses should have both had pick sixes. So
Jalen Hurts tonight, 20 for 34. 278, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and it really could have been 4 picks tonight. So he was fortunate, and he didn't rush for very much either tonight. He had 13 rushes, 33 yards, and only at the end he had an 8-yard and a 9-yard. He was not even averaging 2 yards a carry until that time. So not a banner evening for Jalen Hurts. And I think that's part of it was him not looking fantastic, and I think that part of it was Green Bay's defense. I think you guys, I thought they put a lot of pressure on him. So
yeah, and then Jordan Love, 16 completions, 33 attempts, and only 227 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. And there was moments where he looked great, and then there was times where he just was off. A wide receiver going down this way, Jordan Love throwing behind, and it's too bad because like the other day, we talked about Lamar Jackson missing Zay Flowers by a mile in the end zone, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't as big as that, but there were some moments and I'm like, ooh, that doesn't look good. And it was like a full series, It's like, okay, Jordan is now part of it, I think, is that he was like, whatever was going on with his calves, like obviously that affects, but he's out there. And and then there's other times you're like, wow, he made that throw and that move. And the one that he went, he was going to rush and then he found Jaden Reed for the big 70-yard touchdown. That was really fun to watch.
Yeah, so he looked like there was some big playability on both teams tonight. It was pretty impressive. And then but it wasn't consistent for either one. So I feel personally that it looked a lot like a week 1 match where you have a lot of players who and this is here's the argument. And I'm all for the players in the preseason, not like the starters, not having reps, not getting the chance of being injured, not having the opportunity to do this and that. But when you don't play 1s versus 1s for the preseason, week 1 ends up looking like a preseason game a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying? Like those guys didn't play. They may have played like a series in the preseason. So they're not playing at game speed. They're playing against their own team for the most part. They get a couple of crossover practices with a couple of other teams sort of thing, but they're not playing at game speed and they're not playing 1s versus 1s. Now you get into an actual game. And I think everybody, including Baltimore the other night, looked kind of rusty, looked kind of out of sync. Kansas City to me looked the most organized as a group for week 1 so far out of the 4 teams through the whole game, rather than, spurts of these, those are great plays. And then the next series you watch them and it's like, dude, this is awful. Like,
yeah, I know. So I know. And really it's good to recognize that. I guess this is the question that Sean was texting me tonight, but we don't have an answer. We have no idea what the injury is, but it is an important piece to the Green Bay franchise because it doesn't look good, whether it's an ankle, a knee. He looked like in a lot of pain. He's limping off. But at the end of the day, it affects your fantasy team if you have Jordan Love. It affects your wide receivers if you have Jordan Love. And
Malik Willis, they only signed, I think, on August 26th. So exactly. He's only been at a couple of practices. And it is something that might be significant with it and I'm not saying how serious it is or how serious it isn't, but the 2 series before that, when he was on the sideline and the Eagles were on the field, both trainers were working both of his calves. Mm-hmm. So he was off standing pronate on this board, and they were working and massaging his calves in the back of his legs. So I don't know. I'm not saying what it's got to do with, but hopefully it's as simple as a minor sort of above a cramp or something like that.
Yeah.
Rather than because he was being worked on for the whole time he was off the field in between the last 2 series. So anyway, just to give you some peace of mind, Pack Nation.
Yeah. Well, what? And this is what I talked about in another podcast I was invited to. And it's like, if your starting quarterback goes down, there's not very many teams that have a great backup. Yeah. That's going to, it's not the Jimmy Garoppolo when Tom Brady goes and goes down and they get, they're 10-6, they still make the playoffs. It's very worrisome. Hopefully you drafted a backup quarterback in your league just in case something like this happens.
Consequently, Jimmy Garoppolo is still an excellent backup quarterback.
You mean a 3rd string quarterback who holds a clipboard, so yeah. We saw the Jimmy G experiment in Raider Nation is terrible. The good news is if you're in a 10-team league and someone like Jordan Love goes down, there are guys on the bench are on the waiver are like Kirk Cousins, Some leagues didn't. No one drafted Aaron Rodgers.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, well, Tua's mostly drafted, but yeah, he's there. But there's guys there that are still available. But if you're in a 2-quarterback league or a super flex, if you didn't draft 3 quarterbacks, you're crazy. So
the good news is you still have plenty of money in your waiver wire.
Exactly. For someone, I don't know. Got to take it off of likely and put it onto a quarterback. So
there you go.
So just a reminder, everyone, take a moment to hit the like and subscribe, and follow me on RevTrev NFL on X, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and Facebook. I'd really appreciate it. We want to dive into the fantasy side of things, unless there's some more things, Peter, you want to talk about regarding the game itself, but it kind of both translates now.
Yeah, no, I think we're good.
So last night, watching the game, both starting tight ends looked terrible. The backup tight end looked like the best tight end in the league. And the 2 best wide receivers on the field, even though they looked dynamic, didn't have huge fantasy numbers. But tonight, we just talked about Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Jaden Reed, who just went off. And if you had started any one of those guys, and most people would have started 2 out of the 3, if not all 3. And I had a choice between Jaden Reed and Malik and Neighbors, and I just decided to go with the rookie talent, which is fine. It might still work out for me. Yeah. But boy, I'm kind of kicking myself now.
Yeah. Hindsight's always 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of that's what fantasy players do. They have overreaction theater and all that kind of stuff. But let's talk about, you had the big question of who is the number 1 wide receiver in Green Bay. That's a question that's been asked all offseason. So let me get your take on that.
Well, it's funny because when we're talking about fantasy in particular, when you're on all the fantasy boards, Jaden Reed was ranked higher than Christian Watson, and then Dobbs is quite a bit down. There's leagues where he's not getting drafted at all. Okay, so tonight, what we see tonight is a couple of things. The actual target share wasn't that much different. So Dobbs actually had more targets. Dobbs had 7 targets. Jaden Reed had 6 targets, and Christian Watson had 5 targets. Now, Jaden Reed did get the 1 extra carry, so he had a rush. So he actually had 7 touches. He actually did get the ball the same amount of times, but it wasn't outstandingly different than anybody else. So in that way, if we're talking sharing of the ball, there wasn't really a number 1 guy tonight. However, what Jaden Reed did show tonight is, as far as big plays, whether it's across the middle or running the ball from the other side, a jet sweep or whatever you're going to run, it looks like Jaden Reed is the guy that they're going for. That to me, if you're using tonight as the litmus, Jaden Reed looks specifically like the number 1 guy there.
Yeah, and he looks dynamic, right? Because
Worthy the other night, right?
Yeah. And so they drafted JSN. The fan base wanted JSN, and they went Van Ness, and then they went and got Jaden Reed in the 2nd round. And it's like, you know what? They kind of know what they're doing. So, I mean, who would you rather have at this age? Now, I'm not saying JSN would be bad in Green Bay. I'm saying that maybe, Geno Smith, bad situation, but maybe JSN has a breakout season and is phenomenal this year. I think he's super talented, but it's interesting conversation.
Well, he's also, the one huge advantage that Reed has right now is he comes into a situation where Devontae Adams just left. There isn't a number 1 bona fide receiver in Green Bay. When you're talking about Seattle with JSN, you're talking Metcalf and
Lockett,
who've been there and been significant receivers for years before he gets there. So he goes in there as a wide receiver 3, and this year kind of goes with Lockett, and they kind of are. I think they're kind of more like wide receiver 2, 2A, 2B kind of thing. But I mean, Reed has the opportunity where he is to be legitimately the number 1 receiver, and as long as DK Metcalf's there, you're not going to have that shot. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And Watson, he didn't look himself. He got the touchdown there.
He did get a touchdown, yeah.
He did a lot of blocking.
Yep.
He wasn't as open that much. Good news is he didn't get hurt. That's good news.
Hey, you know what? Rome wasn't conquered in a day, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of positives, I think, with this Green Bay offense. Obviously, with Jordan Love around, with Malik Willis, that changes everything. I mean, you're fading everyone.
I think you're okay.
And Malik Willis?
No, I think that Jordan Love's going to be fine.
Oh, I don't know what I know.
So just on the Watson note there, real quick, fantasy wise, or playing wise. So he did have 5 targets, 3 catches, 13 yards, and a score. But just the 13 yards tonight.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah, that's rough.
Now, the granted is you got saved by the touchdown, so it looks a little better, right?
It does look a little better, but not a ton.
Yeah. So
that was one of my questions is, because I didn't take Jayden Reed in that many leagues this year. I wasn't that confident that when I was at that place where those receivers were available, he wasn't that amazing of an option. But tonight he looked to prove me wrong. So I'm probably wrong on that account at this point.
Yeah. After 1 week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move over to the running backs. We'll start with Barkley. Let's talk about Barkley and his role in Philly. There was a lot of question marks coming in, and it really came down to what we were talking about from yesterday is Lamar and Derrick Henry, and who's going to look like the better running back, and is that going to affect Jalen Hurts and Barkley? And we just kind of determined that Henry is a little bit older and a little bit slower. But tonight, let's talk about Barkley's role in Philly.
Are you kidding me? In our fantasy league, and Show Me the Money, I had my picks. I got to take these 2 guys, and people did not, they weren't sure what to think of Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley. And I was so happy to take him with my first 2 picks, buddy. I feel so good about Barkley. If I could have Barkley, honestly, even in fantasy, like in draft season, if I could get Barkley in 3/4 of my leagues, I would be thrilled to get him as a back. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. Dude is squatting like 610 pounds. The knee is totally fine. It's stronger than it was before the injury happened. And this guy is a dynamic player. He doesn't care. He'll go up the middle. He'll run between tackles. He'll go to the outside. He catches a couple balls. And the guy's a powerhouse. He's a dog. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter. And when you put him into a situation where tonight Jalen Hurts stunk on the ground, he was horrible on the ground. At one point, he was 9 rushes for 18 yards, like horrible. So Barkley finishes with a line of 24 carries, 109, 2 touchdowns, and then the 2 receptions for an additional 23 yards. So 132 all-purpose yards tonight for Barkley, and he was taken out on 3 series for Gainwell. So,
and he caught a passing touchdown, so he got the trifecta. I mean, you start Barkley like you did, and it's 31 points or something crazy like that. And he almost scored another touchdown at the end.
He almost scored the 4th at the end. So that, it's not, for me, it's not, I certainly wasn't expecting a 31-point night, but I'm not as surprised at all that Barkley had a 20 or a 22-point night. So that the extra touchdown was just a crazy bonus.
Yeah. And Caden's in saying, how about them Eagles? They had some moments where they looked really good. And there were some moments where it looked a little shaky, but 2 good teams playing each other, and they look good. BPAC's in the building says once again Packers can't close out a game. I know that was frustrating, and then he also said can't force 2 turnovers in the first 3 drives and only get field goals on both. By the way, that field goal that we missed as well felt like the San Francisco one. That kind of frustrating. It's like when he missed that field goal, I'm like, oh, that feels like it's going to come back to bite us, which it did.
I must have heard the commentary on the program wrong tonight, because what I thought I heard, and I'm happy to be wrong. If somebody heard this differently and I'm incorrect, please correct me. I heard that in 4 college years, your kicker played for 6 teams.
Yeah, it was something insane like that.
I was like, no, I must have fallen asleep just for a brief moment because I thought what they said. So I thought maybe they said in 6 college years, but that wouldn't have been good either because then that would have been sort of, deep South kind of stuff and not had a good couple of years. But I think they said that in 4 years he played for 6 teams and then was the late signing after training camp with the Packers. And I think he went 3 for 4 tonight, if I'm not mistaken. They weren't deep ones. He missed a longer one, but he did hit 3 or 4 field goals tonight. So that wasn't the reason.
And the thing is about him, he doesn't miss extra points.
Yeah,
like he's insane at them.
Yeah.
So from a short end, he's good. I mean, obviously the longer ones are. I mean, that's the risk. It's the percentages are different.
I think he hit a 42 tonight. I was just trying to find that.
Yeah. And then let us praise in the building. Prayers up for Jordan Love.
Sorry,
Andy's here who's saying that it's 0-17 for the Packers.
Oh, Andy, we love you.
Nothing like a Bears fan.
We love you, Andy. You're a good man.
But I just want to let you know, Andy, right now, I know you're trolling, but I just want to clarify. I would never, ever come into your stream if Caleb Williams goes down in week 1 or any week. I would never come in and just joke about the injury and then say that he's mid. But you can do whatever you want. I just wouldn't do that. Good to have Coach Rob Willie here. Welcome, buddy. Good to have you. So we talked about Barkley and how he's unbelievably dominant. Let's talk about the Jalen Hurts side. You have Jalen Hurts in a different league of ours, a serious league of ours.
Yes, I do.
And are you nervous going forward? Like, I don't know how many points he end up getting for you.
I'm not nervous moving forward. I think he got. I'm thinking he got 15.7 or 16 or something like that.
Yeah, I'll look right now.
Not fantastic. I've got a very good team in that league. I don't need my quarterback to score me 30 every week, but certainly he looked sketchy. Actually, Jordan Love was throwing off his back foot a lot tonight too. I don't think there was any balance to the game. Neither one of them, like they each had series where they looked like they had rhythm, but it didn't. Neither quarterback and Jalen Hurts would be kind of like you'd think of him as a top 4 quarterback in the NFL. He did not look fantastic tonight. So whether it be for fantasy or just for his team, they got out with a win tonight. But they got out with a win because Barkley carried it for them. If it was up to Hurts throwing touchdowns, it would not have happened probably tonight for them.
Yeah. And we were discussing today on the phone about Patrick Mahomes and how he's a great real life quarterback, but when it comes to fantasy, he really struggled last year. And last night he did the same thing, got 14 fantasy points. But what's wild is Hurts gets 16.42 and Jordan Love gets 16.40. So Hurts is the best. No, wait a minute. What did the other quarterback do?
No. Lamar got 25 and a half last night.
Lamar is the best
because he ran for 112
and with 25. So interesting that Jordan Love and Hurts and Mahomes all have bad starts to the fantasy season.
Yeah.
But
it's not. Am I concerned? I mean, I'm not concerned. It's one game. In the same way, like if I need a quarterback. I have 2 good quarterbacks on my roster. I need a quarterback who's going to take me into week 16 and 17 in the playoffs and win. Actually 15 and 16, I guess. So but no, I'm not too concerned. 16 points, and I don't think he played well. So that's a 20-point quarterback all the time.
Yeah. Then moving over to the Green Bay side, Josh Jacobs, a lot of excitement. I thought it was interesting, Peter, that they were talking. I was watching something today. I don't know if it must have been a fantasy kind of thing, talking about running backs that go into brand new situations often don't play well that season. So a lot of people try to avoid them. But you got Henry that's moved. You've got Josh Jacobs that's moved. You've got Barkley that's moved. And it's like, what?
Aaron Jones is going to be in that group. Yep.
Yeah. Aaron Jones and just different players. It's the kind of carousel with the salary cap.
Yeah.
And man, what did you think about Josh Jacobs tonight? And was he drafted in the right spot, which would have been what, third round, fourth round, probably third round?
Third round, fourth round. Yeah, on the hinge,
mostly
probably
third.
on the turn. Yep. I thought that Jacobs was. I think he had a horrendous first half. So I don't think that there was any stats for him there in the first half. But I don't think that they used him much in the first half. So I don't think it was really him. It wasn't like this horrible first half that he had. I think he only got. I think he got 6 carries or 5 carries in the first half. So his yards per carry was horrible. In the end, he broke out a couple of big runs, which helped that out. I think he ended up with about a 5.3 yard average. On 16 attempts, 84 yards. There was one for 22 and one for 30, I believe. So those 2 big runs really helped that average. But 16 rushes, 84 yards, a stable place for him. He showed a little bit of big playability. But at the same time, your new running back, is it Watson?
Wilson.
Wilson looked very strong tonight. Like, I thought that when he came in, he had, I think, 3 8 or 10 yard runs for first downs that were really explosive. He looked really explosive tonight when he had the opportunity. So, what does that do for Jacobs? I don't know that bonifies him as the sort of the cowbell that he's been in his career so far, which is where his fantasy value is. It's not in his, he's yards per carry. In fact, you and I have also discussed this. He's never, and this, for the people that are watching this, you're going to be so surprised that I'm going to say this to you. Maybe, Trev, maybe you've said this before. Josh Jacobs does not have a single reception touchdown in the NFL. You heard me correctly. He has never received a touchdown. So in saying that, he kind of relies on being the cowbell carrier in order for his fantasy value to be high. So I think he's probably in a fair zone there. I think that those guys that are drafted around him, to me personally, I take Rachaad White in that spot, based on what the values were for the 2024 draft season. But who knows? Maybe people think differently of that. If you think differently, we'd love to hear from you. But he was fine. He was decent. What are your thoughts?
And in a 0.5 PPR league, he gets 11.4 points, which is wild to think that 84 yards rushing. I thought he was going to get a touchdown tonight. I mean, if you get the touchdown, all of a sudden you're like, I'm really happy with this pick, right? Yeah. And that's how the ups and downs go. Yeah. This is why a Breece Hall, Bijan are going higher, because they're probably going to be those guys. And Barkley went higher, ETN went higher, and I think that's the reason why. But in saying that, he scored his touchdown, and all of a sudden everyone's like, you drafted him too low,
right? Yeah. I mean the touchdowns obviously score. I don't even really think he got a red zone look today. So it just is what it is. The game also has to give itself to the fantasy value as well. And the game tonight was decent. It was mid.
Mm-hmm. But if you think about going forward with Josh Jacobs, he's not going to get the passing work, because the wide receiver core is solid. Yeah. And, Musgrave is not even he's invisible out there. And Tucker Kraft is the tight end that produces the most points. And you're like, what's going on here? This is wild. So it's funny, because as much as I'm personally excited about Josh Jacobs, I am concerned about his pass game work. And that's why I took ATN over him. And other players. I mean, you had Pacheco over Josh Jacobs, and that turned out to be pretty good, didn't it?
Oh yeah, to me Pacheco's indefinitely a top 7 or a top 8 back, and so that to me wasn't the decision. Even Etienne's not in that group. I think that I was putting Josh Jacobs, in my own opinion, I'm putting Josh Jacobs down into the Rachaad White, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, maybe you slip of Alvin Kamara in that group, and sort of like you wonder which one of those guys. But to me, Kamara has the most upside with Rashad in that they receive a ton of balls if you're in a half PPR or 1 PPR league. So they get receptions, and Jacobs isn't as heavy in that reception area. So he's got to be a bell cow for you, or the fantasy value actually kind of, to me, drops to another round or two for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I like Pacheco a lot. But if we're talking about like what actually happened week 1, Jacobs was the better running back. Pacheco, his numbers were terrible, but he got the touchdown. So he gets 3 fantasy points more, which is great. But,
right.
He caught a couple balls, and, so it is interesting. Hey, how like these guys they would be considered tier 2 or tier 3 running backs, and they go up and down. And so it's tough. That's why, people are like, oh, go get that wide receiver. And then we're like, I think this year you go get the stud running backs, because it drops really quick.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to get them at that point, or you're kind of done. Like if you don't get them, it makes it very hard. There's lots of depth at wide receiver in fantasy leagues, in all those fantasy leagues. But I think that you're, to me right now, Pacheco ends up in a more dynamic offense, as far as having, the quarterback play and the way that they mix the ball around. Kelsey was invisible, in Baltimore, against Baltimore in Kansas City the other night. And yet they still looked like a little bit of a machine. So it's a different offense. It didn't ever look as disorganized as the 2 teams tonight did. So
yeah. And Jason's in the building. He said the Green Bay Packers had multiple times to put that game away tonight. Yeah, and they didn't. So you got to give credit to the Eagles there. Excellent, not excellent execution, but good enough to win the game. And in the NFL and the League of Parity, that's important.
Hey, do you know what? And here we are. Like when we start, the one thing about fantasy is when we talk fantasy, it's talking obviously specifically about offensive production, and we can determine whether a game is good or whether a game isn't good. But if you're talking about, like, so here you have 2 teams who didn't necessarily win the battles defensively with points scored on the board, because there was actually quite a few points. I think they must have been 60 plus the over, but 2 teams that they have some very good defensive players on both teams, and they were causing confusion for both quarterbacks. And you could see that on both quarterbacks. They're holding the ball way longer than they should have been holding the ball. They were making poor decisions. Jalen Hurts was throwing it into coverage because it was confusing what he was seeing, whether that's because it's early in the season or Green Bay really turned on, in the secondary, and he didn't want to throw another pick. I don't know what the reasoning was, but you got 2 good teams who don't want to lose games. And it looked like both teams weren't trying to win. Both teams were doing everything not to lose. And that's kind of what the feel of the game was. It was kind of like a struggle. It wasn't someone going out and saying, hey, we're going to go win this game.
Mm-hmm. So
that's how I saw it tonight.
Absolutely. That's some good takes there for sure. So this was the beginning. You've got 4 really good teams that have played each other already. The matchups this weekend are incredible. Sunday night, you have like Lions versus Rams. That's going to be really interesting. And, I think most people are picking the Lions, but we actually don't know how that Rams defense is going to be. They shouldn't be as good, but if they can find a way to slow that team down, maybe that's another great game. And then Monday night is 49ers Jets. Jets have a great defense. We know the 49ers do.
Yeah.
Those are some really, really amazing matchups.
Oh yeah, the schedule makers did a pretty good job. We're doing the whole Stafford Goff thing again, and we're trying to milk that for a little bit longer. I think we're on the last teat of that one. But the 2 teams are actually very solid teams. There was a comment tonight on the pregame about the Seahawks and how the Seahawks look and that sort of stuff. And they were talking about the Rams being, well, they got the Rams in the division, whether they can overcome them. And one of the other commentators goes, you mean, they also have the 49ers. So don't forget about the 49ers. So the NFC West actually this year, because Arizona is not going to be anything to laugh at. They're actually going to be very entertaining to watch. We get an opportunity to watch Marvin Harrison Jr. this weekend to see what, how we were, if we were correct about him in the draft. So that division is going to be a really good division, and they're well represented in the first weekend of the season by the NFL schedule makers. So it kind of shows what they think of that division as well.
Yeah. It's really, really phenomenal what's going to shape up. And a lot, because these 4 teams have already played it, there's a lot of fantasy points that are already up on the board, or maybe not on the board that you were hoping for. But there's a lot of football to be played. And someone had messaged me and said, Trev, like, I'm already done. I've lost. And I'm like, no, you haven't. You haven't. It was literally after last night's game. And it's like, it could turn around here. So, be careful. You don't get too low. It can, crazy stuff. Like Jaden Reed can go off and get, 23 points or whatever it is, or, it's wild. That's why we play it. And
there's lots of football to be played yet. We got lots for the weekend. I enjoyed the 2 games, got a chance to actually watch both games as it ends up at the evenings. I thought it was fantastic. So really enjoyed the whole process. Can't wait for the weekend. There's a number of good games. My Chargers are playing. Everybody, we're loving the underdog position right now. We're loving the thought that everybody thinks that we haven't got it. We love the spot that we're in, actually. And so we're looking forward to the whole weekend.
Yeah, that one's an interesting matchup because we think they're going to run the ball like Harbaugh did in Michigan. Yep. But you've got a Justin Herbert who is a talented quarterback. You don't really know which wide receiver to take. There might be one of those guys that come and become real big fantasy guys, whether it's Palmer or Quentin. Is it Quentin Johnson? Is that his name?
Yeah, or Ladd. They're actually very good receivers, and Quentin Johnson, who had a really sucky rookie year, playing behind
Keenan
Allen, Mike Williams. So that's a big piece right there. So he really didn't get the reps, but he's actually made significant improvement. And I'm suggesting that you're probably going to see him have Mike Williams type numbers this year. He's that good. He's the same height, the same build, the same vertical as Mike Williams. And he's got those capabilities. So I think that the value is that Herbert doesn't have to throw 50 times a game. I think that's where you're going to see the improvement. His efficiency is going to be way better. And that opens up the mid sort of level passing for him rather than having to throw the ball downfield all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a good year.
And then like a guy and nobody's like really drafting a Bo Nix, but it does matter for fantasy because, does Sutton have value? Does Javonte Williams look good there? Are they not just,
I think Javonte Williams is a great valyu.
And so you got that. You still have that they play the Seahawks. That's an interesting battle. There's so many interesting storylines coming up. I'm really excited to see what's going to come up sooner than later, right? So we get to see Captain Kirk in Atlanta with a new Bijan and what that does with Drake London and how that all looks with him. Like there's so many things that are ready to happen this weekend and changes in the NFL, and we're going to I think there's going to be quite a changing of the guard. Actually, quite frankly, I think there's going to be a lot of games and a lot of teams that are going to switch and divisions are going to turn around. I think that as long as Rodgers is happy, there's no way the Jets don't vie for the title in the AFC East. That's a thing, right? So now the AFC East has gone from the New England Patriots dominating it for years and years and years to now it's really the division for Miami and the New York Jets. Like that's predominantly probably the next 5 to 6 years worth of that division's future. So it's turning a lot. Like everything is changing quite a bit. And I remember a few short years ago we were looking at the Cleveland Browns being 0-16 Right.
And this is that, you know, it wouldn't be strange if the Cleveland Browns won the North. Like that wouldn't be that crazy. So there's
and they played the Cowboys in Cleveland. Week 1.
Yeah, so there's some really good stuff happening there. There's those rookie quarterbacks. You know, what does Caleb Williams look like? What does Jaden look like in Washington? You know, we're yet to see. So it's kind of like opening Christmas presents. It's kind of like having these little, you know, stocking stuffers.
Right.
Oh, now we get an NFL stocking stuffer, buddy.
Yeah, and then speaking of the Falcons game, Peter, just been confirmed today that Russell Wilson's not playing. So Justin Fields is the starter in Pittsburgh. And I've been saying for months that he's going to be the starter, but I didn't think it was because of an injury.
Yeah,
I thought it was because that Justin Fields was going to outplay Russell Wilson. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic. I waited on quarterback in one of my leagues really too late, got like totally hosed. And it went Jordan Love, Gardner Minshew, and Justin Fields.
Hey.
So I have 2 starting quarterbacks if Jordan Love goes down.
And you might even look brilliant at it.
Can you imagine? No way. Am I going to win a game in that league? Probably not. But so maybe Justin Fields goes nuclear and kicks.
Well, I think that Justin Fields is that guy, and I think the only issue with Justin Fields in Pittsburgh is Mike Tomlin. That's not the way Mike Tomlin pictures a quarterback playing. That's not necessarily his style. He spent most of his years with a Ben Roethlisberger type who could, you know, move the ball a little bit with his feet, but in general, he's a pocket passer. He's somebody who passes the ball downfield. You have that's just not his style, but I think that they can win with him. I think that he really gives them a fresh look. And I actually really like Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields, given the opportunity and a good offensive line, I think he can lead a team to 9 or 10 wins. I do.
Yeah. And Shadid is here, and you're right. We're going to learn from this. The only thing is, if Jordan Love's done, is like, if it's a massive injury, I don't think we learn from this. I think we try to keep our head above water, and I'm not sure because I just don't believe in Malik Willis at this moment. But he's got an opportunity to prove everyone wrong, and you just change the game plan, right? So yeah, if Jordan Love's okay and he's going to play, then I agree. We learn from this. If he's out, I'm a little nervous. And I went on a fairly significant rant at the beginning of the video that you might want to watch regarding the field conditions. I was pretty heated from the loss and from the loss of Jordan Love too. So yeah.
You're okay, man. You're okay. You got this. Eye of the tiger.
Eye of the tiger. Yeah. It's definitely a fun hobby, but sometimes you just get so excited, you hype yourself up, and you just got to be like, it's just a game I'm watching, and fantasy football is fun, but it's a hobby, right?
And they most likely weren't going 16-0 anyway.
No, I said 13-4, but other than that, it's fine.
There you go. So they only have to finish the season 13-3.
But I remember I was even more upset. Was it week 1? Bears versus Packers. Aaron Jones wrecks his knee. He's done. The season's done. He comes back, and in the game, how he did it, they said you can't wreck it anymore. It comes in, they win the game. It was like one of the greatest moments. That it was like, there's no way, but I can remember being so angry. Like, that was such a disappointing loss, because it's like when you lose that guy, it's like, wow, it's like, it's over. It's over. I don't care what people say. But we will see what it says, and we'll go from there. But any other comments about, fantasy or the week coming up that you want to make?
No, dude, it's been, I'm in the middle of, going through a couple of games. I had some players play this week. My leagues are pretty solid. I feel pretty good about the position that I'm in with them right now. I feel bad for those players who, those teams who did get injuries or whatever this week. That's just part of what we play. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the weekend. There's still lots of questions to answer, and the questions that we were talking about tonight, There's plenty of other players that are about to take the field on Sunday and Monday that we have to answer those questions about, whether as teams in the NFL or as fantasy players on fantasy managers teams. So looking forward to it, man. It's gonna be a blast either way.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming out, watching. Hit the like and subscribe. And thank you, Peter, for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man.
Always good to connect and chat about the NFL and about fantasy. And stay tuned. There's going to be lots more content coming your way.
Have a great night, guys.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I should hit the outro video just to make it even more spectacular. Let's do it.